The Zanj slave rebellion was a slave revolt by black Africans against their Arab Muslim slave masters that took place in 9th century Iraq, lasting 16 years. In my previous 2 episodes, we established some facts. Number 1, the largest slave rebellion in human history was the Zanj rebellion, not the Haitian rebellion. Number 2, the slavery practiced in southern Iraq in the salt marshes was much more severe and brutal of a slavery system than any other slavery system on planet Earth, including the transatlantic slave trade. The trek across the Sahara Desert to reach Iraq from sub-Saharan Africa was actually much more lethal than the Middle Passage. And the working conditions in the salt marshes of southern Iraq were much more lethal than the American South. Then there's the fact that many of the black African slaves that were brought to Iraq were castrated. Astronomically high infant mortality rates. I mean, can you imagine? What good would an infant be in the salt marshes of southern Iraq? So these reasons and many other reasons are why we don't see modern day black Afro-Iraqis, because they were genocided, because they were wiped out. In this episode, we're going to do a deep dive into the gigantuan effort that's been made to cover up this history and the reasons behind it. And Google AI was surprisingly honest when it came to these questions. For instance, Google AI addressed the fact that it is likely Islamophobia has contributed to educators and historians' refusal to acknowledge this dark historical truth. Why do you think the powers that be don't educate people on this forgotten piece of history? Could it be due to the fact that the slavers in the Zanj slave trade are Arab Muslim versus the transatlantic slave trade being primarily white and European? Scholars and historians have identified several reasons why the Zanj rebellion and the Arab Muslim slave trade are less frequently taught in Western and global curricula compared to the transatlantic trade. While your observation about the identity of slavers is a fact discussed by some commentators, the omission is generally attributed to a combination of historical, practical, and political reasons. Western-centric education. Modern history education in Europe and the Americas is often Western-centric. The transatlantic slave trade is emphasized because it's foundational to the specific history, economy, and racial dynamics of the United States, Brazil, and Europe. In contrast, the Zanj rebellion is seen as part of Middle Eastern or Islamic history, which is often skimmed over in Western general education. Lack of documentation and physical legacy. The transatlantic trade was meticulously documented by European powers through ship logs, auction records, plantation diaries. Visibility. Because the descendants of the transatlantic trade form large, visible diaspora communities in the Americas, the history is impossible to ignore. The vanishing population. As you noted previously, the Arab Muslim trade left a much smaller visible descendant population due to high mortality rates, systemic castration of male slaves, and the assimilation into local populations. This lack of a vocal surviving diaspora in the Middle East has historically led to less public pressure to teach this history. Political and religious sensitivities. Discussions regarding the Arab Muslim slave trade can be politically sensitive. Religious context. Some scholars suggest that a desire to avoid Islamophobia or offending religious sensitivities can lead to the topic being avoided in academic or public discourse. Contemporary slavery. In some regions where this trade occurred, forms of modern slavery or extreme labor exploitation still persist. In parts of Mauritania or the Gulf. This makes the history a living political issue that some governments prefer to keep out of textbooks. Absence of an abolitionist narrative. The transatlantic slave trade was a well-documented abolitionist movement. This transatlantic slave trade has a well-documented abolitionist movement led by figures like William Wilberforce and Frederick Douglass, which provides a redemptive arc for Western history. In the Arab world, there is no comparable, centralized internal abolitionist movement. Slavery was primarily ended due to 19th and 20th century international diplomatic and military pressure from the West. And don't get it twisted for 1 second. Do you know who they're referring to when they say the West? Yeah, that's right. White Europeans. White Europeans ended slavery. I will say it again. It was white Europeans that ended slavery across the world. While some argue that this is a deliberate effort to protect certain narratives, others see it as a byproduct of a school system that prioritizes its own regional history over global events. Are you sure it's not just to demonize white people? That's what I think it is. So part of the reason it's not talked about in the Arab context is because there is no redemptive arc to the story. Because it was white men who ended the Arab Islamic slave trade. It's not noteworthy to modern historians and educators. It's because that would fly in the face of the narrative that white people are particularly irredeemable when it comes to human atrocity, huh? While modern historians and educators are increasingly acknowledging the Arab Muslim slave trade, your assessment touches on a significant debate regarding how and why different historical atrocities are prioritized in global education. Several complex factors contribute to why the Zanj Rebellion and the Arab trade are often omitted or framed differently from the transatlantic trade. The redemptive arc in abolition. You are correct that the narrative of Western abolition is a major part of how slavery is taught in the West. Internal versus external abolition. The transatlantic trade has a built-in narrative of internal moral struggle, the rise of Western abolitionist movements, the Enlightenment, and the U.S. Civil War, which provides a redemptive conclusion for Western societies. The Arab context. In many parts of the Islamic world, former abolition only occurred in the 20th century. Saudi Arabia in 1962, Mauritania in 1981, often as a result of external European diplomatic and military pressure. White men ended slavery because this abolition didn't stem from a massive internal grassroots movement. It doesn't offer the same national hero stories used in Western curricula. You mean international villain narrative? Identity and the victim oppressor narrative. There is a scholarly and political debate about whether certain histories are suppressed to maintain specific modern narratives. Political sensitivity. Educators sometimes avoid the Arab slave trade to prevent fueling modern anti-Muslim sentiment or Islamophobia. This can lead to a double standard where Western atrocities are scrutinized while others are treated as taboo or sensitive. Racializing history. The transatlantic slave trade was uniquely racialized, with Europeans developing a pseudoscience of white supremacy to justify it. This makes it a primary focus for modern discussions on systemic racism in the West. In the Arab trade, while anti-black racism certainly existed, the system was often religiously rather than purely racially justified, making it fit less neatly into the modern Western political framework. Lack of a vocal diaspora. A primary reason for the silence is the demographic erasure you noted earlier. Advocacy. In the Americas, the descendants of enslaved people are a massive, politically influential group that has fought for centuries to ensure their history is taught. The vanishing descendants. Due to a high mortality, systemic castration, total social assimilation, there is no comparable black Arab political bloc in most Middle Eastern countries to demand a similar reckoning with the past. So there you go. There's the final installment of the Zanj Rebellion. Pretty interesting, huh? Pretty sick and twisted how the left has twisted every single historical narrative to try to frame the white man, the white race, as bad, as evil, as atrocious. But obviously we see that it couldn't be further from the truth. It was white men that ended slavery worldwide. The United States had a civil war over it. No other country in human history has ever actually fought foreign wars to stop slavery. No other country in human history has ever fought a civil war to free a proportion of its population. Obviously, us white people, we have a conscience. We are always criticizing ourselves. We are always doing these earnest self-examinations as to the ultimate morality of our conduct. No other group on planet Earth has a conscience like we have, and it's been weaponized against us. So for the few people that actually see this, please share this with everyone you know. Let's try to spread this history. I know it's pretty much, I hate to say it, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that this will not reach anybody and that this history will remain in the shadows. But I'm trying. I'm trying to spread the truth, guys. Please help me. I'm getting tired. Please help me. Give me a follow, give me a like. Make a comment, share my video. I'm getting kind of dispirited a little bit. My morale is kind of going down, guys. Anyways, I'm going to keep trying to fight. I love our country. I love our people. And I think our country, our people, our civilization are worth fighting for. So, God bless you.